liftoff and the clock has started. Yes, sir. Reading you loud and clear.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Discovery, roger, go from
Well, thank you, Andrew, and welcome to the August 7, 2019 edition of Space News. This is Peter Auld, and I'm delighted to announce to you that we've got the whole team together back. We've got Michael Abdullah, Angelo De Grazia, and Tina Stagg. We're all from the Space Association. Let's get started with Tina.
Thanks, Peter, and good evening, space fans. To International Space Station news, NASA's ISS Program Manager said there are significant challenges ahead for the station because of uncertainty over when commercial crew vehicles will enter service. Kirk Shyman, speaking at the ISS Research and Development Conference last week, said there's some significant uncertainty about when Boeing and SpaceX will be ready to start routine missions carrying astronauts to and from the station. He said the agency was looking at a number of options involving crew time and resources on the station, depending on when those vehicles are ready. While the transition to commercial crew vehicles may be shaky, he said he was optimistic that NASA will soon enjoy a normal cadence of missions again. To the Moon and Artemis and Lunar Gateway program, Blue Origin and SpaceX won agreements from NASA last week to advance the development of launch vehicles and lunar landers. Blue Origin received 3 non-reimbursable Space Act agreements to work on guidance systems, fuel cells and engine technology for its Blue Moon lunar lander. SpaceX received 2 awards, one for studying issues about landing its Starship vehicle on the Moon, and the other for in-space propellant transfer technology. The companies are among 13 that received the awards to advance a wide range of technologies involved with exploration efforts. One of the first companies awarded contracts by NASA for commercial lunar lander services has backed out. Orbit Beyond informed NASA that internal corporate challenges would prevent it from carrying out a $97 million task order awarded by NASA at the end of May for a lunar lander mission scheduled for September 2020. The company didn't elaborate on the reasons it was not able to perform the mission. Orbit Beyond, along with Astrobotic and Intuitive Machines, received awards from NASA as part of its Commercial Lunar Payload Services program. Orbit Beyond will still be eligible for future task orders with the program. NASA has announced a call for the next phase of commercial lunar payload services. NASA recently announced the latest opportunity for industry to participate in its commercial lunar payload services efforts to deliver science and technology payloads to and near the Moon. It called on companies to push the boundaries of current technology to support the next generation of lunar landers that can land heavier payloads on the surface of the Moon, including the South Pole, as part of the agency's Artemis program, which will send the first woman and next man to the Moon by 2024, setting the stage for future human exploration of Mars. NASA anticipates the need for both small and mid-sized lunar landers to enable a variety of science investigations and larger technology demonstration payloads that will meet science objectives and human exploration goals. Future payloads could include rovers, power sources, science experiments, and technology to be infused into the Artemis program. And over to Peter.
Thanks, Tina. A recent Chinese launch used technology similar to that on SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket to guide the descent of the rocket's first stage. The Long March 2C launch last week was the first time the rocket flew with grid fins attached to the first stage. The fins were used to guide the first stage to a more precise drop zone, addressing concerns about spent stages falling on towns and villages. The technology is also a step toward controlled descent and landings, which could lead to the reuse of rocket stages. And still in China, Chinese commercial launch company iSpace plans to increase its launch rate now that it has successfully reached orbit. As reported on last week's Space News, the company's Hyperbola 1 rocket successfully launched several payloads into low Earth orbit, making it the first private company in China to reach orbit. With that success under its belt, iSpace says it will perform up to 8 launches next year. It was also critical of other launch startups that have tried and failed to reach orbit. If you don't have a rocket that can go into orbit, that shows you that you don't have a product. What business model can you speak of then? A company vice president said. Well, he's been taking diplomatic lessons from Donald Trump. Mike.
Thanks, Peter, and let's look at some Indian space news. India's Chandrayaan-2 lunar mission has raised its orbit once again. The spacecraft, launched on the 22nd of July, fired its thrusters for about 16 minutes last week, raising the apogee of its orbit to nearly 71,800 kilometres. The spacecraft will perform several more manoeuvres to raise its orbit until it reaches the Moon and can manoeuvre into orbit around it in mid-August. And turning to Japan, a Japanese government official confirmed that discussions are underway with India about a joint lunar mission. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga confirmed last week that Japan's space agency JAXA is in talks with its Indian counterpart ISRO about a lunar lander mission. However, the government official offered few details and nothing new about the mission itself. Reports in India last week, after the successful launch of the Chandrayaan-2 mission, and as reported here on Space News, said that a Chandrayaan-3 mission in the early 2020s could be done in cooperation with Japan. And over to you, Angelo.
Thanks, Mike. Let's talk SpaceX. Elon Musk says a SpaceX Starship design update is coming in mid-August. Not much longer will we have to wait for our next update about SpaceX's Mars colonising spaceship, which the company calls Starship. SpaceX founder and CEO Elon Musk had promised that he'd unveil the latest Starship design changes after the vehicle's stubby test flight prototype, known as Starhopper, completed its first untethered hop. That occurred recently at SpaceX's South Texas facility in Boca Chica, so the update will be coming soon, probably by mid-August, Musk said not long thereafter on Twitter. Musk first outlined a detailed Starship design in September 2016 during a talk at the annual International Astronautical Congress, the IAC, in Mexico, though he had discussed a Mars colonial transporter architecture more vaguely previously. Back then, the reusable 100-passenger vehicle and the huge booster that will launch it from Earth were together called the Interplanetary Transport System, or ITS. Musk then summarised SpaceX's latest Mars colonisation thinking at the next IAC meeting, which occurred in Australia in September 2017. He announced that the ITS had become the BFR, short for Big Falcon Rocket. Technically, the booster was BFR and the spaceship was the BFS, short for Big Falcon Spaceship, but most people just called the whole system the BFR. Another update came in September 2018 when Musk announced that the spaceship rocket duo would stand 387 feet or 118 metres tall at launch, about 11% taller than previously envisaged. He also revealed that the BFS would feature 2 large, actuated fins near its tail to help the vehicle steer through planetary atmospheres for safe landings. A landing leg back there will also be stylised to look like one of those structures, he added, giving the BFS the 3-finned look of the rocket flown by the comic book character Tintin in the 1954 book Explorers on the Moon. 2 months later, Musk announced another name change. BFS was now Starship and the BFR was to be called Super Heavy. SpaceX sees Starship and Super Heavy as eventually performing all of the company's spaceflight duties, from launching satellites to ferrying people to and from the Moon and Mars to completing superfast point-to-point passenger trips around the Earth. As a result, SpaceX plans to eventually phase out its other spaceflight hardware, its workhorse Falcon 9 rocket, the newer, more powerful Falcon Heavy, and the cargo and crew versions of its Dragon capsule. SpaceX aims to launch satellites using Starship and Super Heavy as early as 2021. The first crewed mission, which will send Japanese billionaire Yuzuki Maezawa and a handful of artists on a trip around the moon, remains targeted for 2023. Starhopper, which sports a single Raptor engine, has now left the ground 3 times. In addition to its recent flight, which Musk said targeted an altitude of about 65 feet or 20 metres, the vehicle took 2 brief test hops in early April, remaining tethered to the ground for safety's sake on both occasions. The next hop, 200 metres, is expected soon. Can't wait.
Hey, isn't that Maezawa bloke gone bankrupt? The Japanese guy?
He paid a big deposit, so he's still got the flight. He may be broke, but he's still got the flight.
Maybe he's got a one-way ticket this time.
Maybe he would hope that something happens and he can disappear off the face of the earth somewhere. Back to you, Tina.
Thanks, Big Ange. Astronomers have discovered a 3-planet solar system relatively close to Earth. The system was detected in data from NASA's TESS, or Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite. The planetary system orbits a red dwarf star 73 light-years from Earth. 2 of the planets are sub-Neptune worlds with diameters 2.1 and 2.4 times that of the Earth, while the third is a super-Earth, about 1.2 times the size of the Earth. All 3 planets orbit close to the star and are probably too warm to be habitable. Over to Mike.
Thanks, Tina. And the light sail is working. Good news from the Planetary Society. LightSail 2's solar sail is functioning as intended. After launching on June 25th, then deploying its solar sail system on July 23rd, mission managers have been working with the solar sail to optimise the way LightSail 2 orients itself towards the Sun. Now, the Planetary Society has reported that the spacecraft has used its solar sail to raise its orbit. So far, the spacecraft has raised its orbit by about 2 kilometres, or 1.24 miles, which it says is due to solar sailing. So that means mission accomplished for the tiny spacecraft. It's been a long journey for the Planetary Society, the world's largest non-governmental space organisation, whose solar sail work started back in 2005 with the Cosmos 1 solar sail spacecraft. Unfortunately, that mission failed when its Russian launch vehicle never made it into orbit. Now, all the hard work has paid off with the success of LightSail 2. Okay, the television network Epix is planning a mini-series about the Apollo 8 mission. The 6-part series will be based on the 2018 book Rocket Men by Robert Curzon about the mission, placing it into the context of other events taking place in 1968. The network didn't disclose when it plans to air the series. And back to you, Pete.
Thanks, Mike. That book is really worth reading, Rocket Man. If you can get a hold of it, it's a great read. All right, finally this week, members of Neil Armstrong's family reached an undisclosed settlement in 2014 with the hospital where the astronaut died after heart surgery. Documents provided by an anonymous source revealed that Mercy Health, Fairfield Hospital in Ohio, paid $6 million to the Armstrong sons, siblings and grandchildren in a wrongful death settlement. Armstrong died at that hospital in 2012 after heart surgery, and the family argued that errors in the care he received resulted in his death. The settlement came after a family lawyer suggested in 2014 that Armstrong's sons might discuss the issue at an event marking the 45th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing. Well, that's sad. And that's it for Space News this week. It's great to have the team back again, and it's back to you, Andrew.